memory palace design. You said, you're not quite there with that. How do you approach it? What are your thoughts on, getting it right so you have minimum effort with maximum output in terms of the memory palace?
Well, I find everyone works differently with palaces. I've always been kind of lazy with creating them. Like for the longest time, I used the same handful. And then I've been slowly building more and more. And now that I've talked to some people, they're like, "Oh, you have like this many?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so they get motivated to build more. But like I talk to guys who go to the World Memory Championships, like, "Oh yeah, I got like 150 because you're doing hour cards, hour numbers, 30-minute binary. It's like spoken numbers, which can go a long time if you're really good at it. So you need and multiple trials of some of these events, not the long ones, but so you need to have a lot of journeys, palaces. Again, same thing, right? And so my approach, I'm basically just pulling every palace I have. So I'm at like give or take about 65 now. Like 50 of them are palaces I've used at least a few times and know. Like half of those I know intimately and very well, and I can move through them, and I'm great with them. And then the other 25, I probably need to practice a little bit, so I'm not too slow on the event day.
Right.
But then, yeah, there's another like, I don't know, 10 or 15 at least, where I feel like I basically come up with the idea of them and walk through them a couple of times, but I should probably use them a few times before the event, right? So I know, oh yeah, maybe that location isn't so good, or these, you know what I mean? Like when you walk around and maybe two places are too close to each other or whatever. Like some people, when they use a memory palace, they can walk into a living room and they can place like they can make 20 locations in there, right? They, okay, I got the top of my dresser, my TV, this and that, and my table, the top of the chair, the bottom of the chair, and they dance around. And like, I don't get it. When most memory palaces, I walk into a room, I use the room, maybe like I look at one end of the room, the other end of the room, and I'm done. Like I can't use a space too much. Like some places I use just one per room. Sometimes it's two or three, but I've always been the type where like I need big places, big spaces, and like I can't put too many locations in them. It just doesn't work for me. So again, some people might have like with what I'm doing, just create like super long journeys, like crazy. And again, that doesn't work for me, especially with the method I use. Like, because like with you, if you're like, okay, I'm going to place 3 cards per location, and you can like calculate exactly how many locations you're going to need. Mine varies. So, right. So like if I go through a deck of cards, on one deck of cards, I might only need 12 locations. On another one, I might need 20 or 21.
Right.
So I basically have to have a palace for each deck, and I have maybe 5 or 6 palaces where they're big enough that I can comfortably, where I know I'm not going to run out of room, I can comfortably fit like 2. So I'll be using those for that. But and then usually if I skip a location, so like if I'm in one big palace, and then after that happens, I usually imagine like lightning striking and fire and stuff. And like I almost create like a barrier,
right?
And then I start like a new deck in the following location. So I skip a location, make it look all exciting and end of daisy and stuff and judgmental, and then I go to the next location, and then I'm like, okay, this is the new deck now, and then I know
Cardigan.
Yeah. So, but yeah, my approach is basically, and I don't know if this sounds like if this is the way you'd approach it, but because of the system I use, I can't exactly map out everything I'm going to do, like in the way of how many locations I need. So I'm basically, with the exception of a few palaces, doing all individual palaces. So the fun part there is once I figure out these last few, and a lot of them are just like places I've lived, worked. I use a bunch from some video games too, actually. So those are good. Places levels of video games like GoldenEye and Super, like Mario 64, games I played a lot as a kid and even as an adult too. And the levels, they're like places I've lived in. Like I know them very well. So like it's not weird to me. I got to come up with a few more, but the thing is, the tricky part, I got to memorize the order of my palaces. So that's a whole different problem I got to figure out, because I could nail all 70 decks perfectly and be laughing all the way to the bank. and then I hit submit, and then I realize, I mixed the order for a couple palaces, and then there goes half my decks. Like if I have them in the wrong sequence. So,
have you experimented with alphabetizing them?
I haven't. No, I'm open to any suggestions you might have. What I was going to do was break them up into groups of 7, and then figure out a logical way to group them together, and even like a logical way that makes sense to go, like why this palace would lead into this one and this one, even though like physically they might not be anywhere near each other. I'll create like a dumb little narrative to link them together, and I've already kind of been doing that with the events I've been streaming, like the longer, like the hour cards and the 2-hour cards I did, because I got to memorize 40 decks, right? So I got to think of there. So I've been coming up with funny stories as to, like, when I'm doing the Gold Knight levels, I just go in order. I'm like, okay, I know the dam is the first level of the game, the facility is the second level, the runway is the third. So I know the order, so I can go through it that way. But alphabetizing is not a bad idea at all.
The other thing that comes to mind, I mean, I don't know exactly how I would do this, but I would, if I didn't like the alphabet, if it didn't feel right, all I would do to remind myself of the order is I would have the 0-0 palace, the 0-1 palace, the 0-2 palace, and the 0-0 palace is going to be the Dr. Zeus palace, because that's my image for 0-0. The 0-1 is going to be the tragedy mask, sad mask, because that's my 0-1. The 0-2 is going to be the sun palace, right? And so I would just assign them that way. Then it's like no big deal. Where do I go next? Well, I just finished 0-2, so I go to 0-3. And then by the time I get to, so let's say it takes all 100, right? I get to, or 99 is the 100th palace in the 0-0 to 99, arranging it that way. I've done that, and it works real nice as an alternative to alphabetizing. So,
okay. Yeah, I guess you could, like, if I did it that way, because I do have a little 2-digit system. If I needed two digits, I have a little 2-digit system I'll use. And yeah, I could just start like at the beginning of each palace, like add like a location 0 almost to it, like a beginning, add a beginning to it, and put that image there. And then I know, okay, that one's, like my image for 0-0 is Zeus from the movie Turbo Kid. He's a villain in it. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but low budget Canadian, like retro, like love letter to 80s, like action movie.
I have the vaguest memory of it, but I don't know if I've even seen it. But I used to work at Queen Video, so I've seen like every movie that exists. No, not every movie.
New. It came out a few years ago, and
sorry. Well, I thought you said it was the '80s movie.
No, it's like it's a retro love letter.
Okay, so
like the '80s, like action and stuff. And anyway, he's played by.
Wasn't there a video game called Turbo Kid, or isn't that a?
There's one coming out.
Okay.
I don't know if it's out yet, but there's actually a game coming out based on the movie. Soon, I think.
I'll look it up later because it strikes such a bell.
Okay.
Maybe it's a character in a movie at some point, like Gleaming the Cube. That's what comes to mind when I think of this, which is an old skateboard movie, or was it a BMX movie? Something like this.
That's bizarre because Turbo. I don't mean to get off topic, but in Turbo, they're all they ride BMX bikes.
I know what I'm getting up here. There's a band that I saw play in Kamloops, British Columbia, once upon a time called Engine Kid. And that's probably something that I'm getting in my head. And then Kid Icarus was a game. And I think there was like a turbo mode in Kid Icarus, or there was some kind of video game with turbo something. Anyway, I'm mixing a bunch of stuff, which is, a problem in memory.
Yeah, dude.
We could sometimes do that. But no, I thought you said it was an 80s film. And then I was starting to think, I can picture this now. But what I was going to tell you is that imagine that you do a 0-0 to 99 memory palace network. Then, speaking of shadows, you could have the shadow version of that, right? So you have the positive and then you have the negative. And you could experiment actually just reusing it. Now, I don't know if that would actually work in a goal like that, because the possibility for confusion and blurring is pretty high. But you can think of other ways to reduplicate it. Because one thing that I haven't done yet, but I'm thinking of that might strike a chord with you is why not have multiple 0-0 to 99s based on things like male, female, or even non-binary, or whatever kinds of assignments that you want to do, just different versions. So you could have, whatever. I use Thomas Zaz, but I could think of what was her name? Sue Johansson, like Susan. She used to do the Canadian show. I don't know if you remember it when you were a kid, but when I was a teenager, I always used to listen to the Sunday night sex show on CBC with Sue Johansson. So Susan could be the female.
Pleasure test.
You remember that? No.
I was a kid, but I remember, flicking through and laughing like an immature little.
Right. I used to love that show. Anyway, like, just as an example, now I don't know what my female 01 would be, but it's just kind of like an interesting way of reduplicating the core system and just changing it to a different version of itself, essentially.
That's cool. I mean, or if nothing else, like it'd be good for variety too, right?
Yeah.
So you don't get bored of your images, because that's one complaint about people with a 2-digit or a 1-card system is that they get bored. They get bored of their images. So like, or if you want to compete in these longer events, the World Memory Championships, I mean, a single card system is good for speed cards or even 10-minute cards. But when you're memorizing cards for an hour and you're seeing the same images over and over and over again, it can get tiresome, which is why I love having a 2-card system. Because like I'll memorize cards for hours, and there could be a few images I still don't ever see that don't come up, right?
Right.
But in your case, though, if you're using a 2-digit system, like maybe it'd be good even just to switch things up to have like a shadow or even 2 shadows for each thing, just for variety, or I don't know. But
right. Yeah. Anyway, those are the two ideas that come to mind as ways to just organize where you are that are kind of. It might not play out as easy in reality as in my imagination, but this is one of the principles I use with memorizing foreign language vocabulary is, I don't have to remember what comes next because it's an A word in an A palace. So that reduces a certain level. I don't have to think, well, it's got to start with an A. So that's already a trigger. So that's part of the logic behind that. Ron told me, by the way, that when he considered doing his Afghanistan memory wall project, that he had considered doing it alphabetically because precisely that reason. If he's doing all the A names, then, it's just like a no-brainer. I'm in the A sequence until I'm done the A sequence. But as I understand it, he changed it to chronological order.
Okay.
In any case, there's probably many possible ways to organize them.
Ways to do it. Yeah. Cool.
So
when you're mentioning the gender too, like as a shadow, I was thinking too, one strategy I use for names is like, I kind of gender names too. So like, if I see the name Paul, I always think of a ball because it rhymes.
Right.
So I see the name Paula, I think the same thing because I just imagine it as like a female version of that name. So I kind of, by doing that, or like if I had an image for a female name and not a male one, I realized, those are pretty similar. I'll just make this name a male version of this name. Like, I don't know, Kendra and Ken or something like that.
Right.
And then I'll do stuff like that. So, you can get really creative with I don't know. Anyway, that was just a funny thought I had, but that's something I do that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, and it's like a nice little cheat just to work a little less hard, I guess.